Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to The View from the Midwest. Welcome into anybody who's watching this for the first time. I do these very sporadically, so obviously I don't have too much of a following, but every once in a while I get some people to kind of stick around. Today I am the Last Sane Sports fan, today the Last Sane movie fan, as today I'm going to kind of review the Star Wars The Last Jedi trailer. It's going to be more of a review, as I mentioned, as opposed to a reaction, because by now everybody's done their reaction. I was incredibly impressed by the trailer overall. I thought it was well put together. I thought it was beautifully edited. There were a lot of stunning visuals in there. It was a very, very solid trailer. It didn't necessarily produce the kind of emotion that you got from any of the Force Awakens trailers, but overall it was a solid addition into the Star Wars pantheon of movie trailers. So let's kind of get right into it. Hopefully you don't mind my hands kind of moving around, because I'm going to be kind of clicking around, and I don't really have the capability to put the video down here in the little corner, so I'm just going to be kind of watching it and talking about it as it goes. It starts off really kind of interestingly enough with Kylo Ren in that just kind of wide shot, looking at everything going on, all the machines being built for the First Order. Then we get the shot of the ATM-6s or ATMC-6s, whatever they're called. Then we get that interesting shot. It's very reminiscent of Anakin Skywalker invading the Jedi Temple in Return of the Sith. That shot from above with Anakin Skywalker leading all the troops in. Get the same thing here with Kylo Ren leading all the troopers in right there. Then you get the picking up of the lightsaber. And everybody's going on about the voiceover. Is he talking to Is he talking to Kylo Ren? Is he talking to Rey? My feelings on the matter are, I understand, because there's a lot of kind of motion going on with these trailers, how it's put together, what's edited where. I think this is fairly straightforward in that he's talking to Kylo Ren, because Snoke says, "When I found you." Well, I'm a very literal person when it comes to interpreting how things are said. I understand that there's wiggle room there, but when has Snoke found Rey? That was my interpretation of the whole thing, because Snoke hasn't found Rey. If Rey is brought to him, you didn't really find her. Somebody else found her and then brought her to you. So my interpretation of the whole thing is that he's not talking to Rey, because he didn't really find Rey. I don't think you're going to have Snoke just all of a sudden showing up on Ahch-To or any of these planets and stealing her away from Luke and taking her that way. I think that she's going to be either kidnapped or just voluntarily, kind of like Luke did with Vader, going with Kylo Ren to meet Snoke, and it's just not going to work out quite the same way. But just that line, I don't know, that throws me off. I don't think that that's to be taken, to not be taken literally. I think he's talking to Kylo Ren, to Ben Solo, however you want to think about him, in terms of when he found him, because to me he hasn't found Rey. It's interesting. Somebody else pointed out in that scene where he's picking up the lightsaber hilt, there's the red guards there. I think they're called Praetorian guards. So I think that that's probably going to be what we saw in the D23, the behind the scenes trailer, where Kylo Ren is fighting some of the other stuntmen. I think he's going to be kind of testing himself against the Praetorian guards in that instance. So then you get the black screen again, more voiceover going on. Rey ignites her lightsaber, awesome shot right there. But again, some more voiceover in that instance where Rey is talking about how something was always inside of her and something was always in there, and now it's awoken. And that's kind of returning back to the whole idea of The Force Awakens, the title of the movie. And just from an overall perspective, I think people aren't giving enough credit. To me, that voiceover fits perfectly with something I'm going to talk about a little bit later towards the end of the trailer. I think that voiceover is her talking to Luke, and I think that that's the same scene at the very end of the trailer. But again, we'll get to that here in just 1 second. A beautiful shot of the island giving over the lightsaber. The hand looks awesome for Luke. That's really well done CGI. For whatever reason, CGI seems to kind of always boggle my mind in that they can get it picture perfect when it's up close, but then you pull out a little bit. You would think it'd be slightly easier to do it that way, but for whatever reason, it looks a little bit cheesier. Then you get some more stuff here with Luke and Rey going on about how he was not scared the first time. And again, we kind of are talking about what was he scared of. I'm taking it literally. I think that he's still on that island. I think that he's still talking to Rey. I think that he's talking about Kylo Ren. The only other thing that kind of popped into my mind is that he could be talking either one about whoever Rey's parents are. Maybe they were Force users, and they, or something that was brought up on the John Campea show as his Star Wars Talk Tuesday. Perhaps it's a situation where he was involved with Rey and ended up dropping her off on the planet. Again, I still don't necessarily like that idea because it's Luke dropping her off on the planet and then putting her with Unkar Platt, who was basically kind of a scumbag. And I would just think that Luke would have had more sense to be able to find somebody that could have taken a little bit more care of her, given her a little bit more parenting. So I just don't buy into that. To me, the one that isn't being explored is Luke could be talking about himself. That he kind of came into things very quickly. Obviously, it took over the span of 3 movies to really get him at his full force powers. But that's still a relatively short period of time. And obviously it wouldn't have scared him because he was just kind of feeling the awakening within himself. Maybe it didn't scare him then. He now realizes perhaps it should have been. He should have been a little more cautious in how everything worked out. But ultimately, I think that he's talking to Rey. I think he's talking about Kylo Ren, and that he just wants to be cautious, and he doesn't really want to get involved in any of this again because he's failed so badly in that instance, and it's a family member. Then we get more shots of Kylo Ren. I'm really going to be disappointed because I'm pretty sure that this scene shows him smashing the helmet. I'm extremely disappointed with that. I think that the helmet was a fairly iconic look. It wasn't necessarily as good as Vader. Obviously, nothing will be. But if he really smashes that and we just see Adam Driver throughout the majority of the movie, I like Adam Driver. I don't think all the things that negatively that a lot of fans say about his look and how he acted in that movie. But I'm still going to miss the mask a little bit. Then you get the... we're talking about the scenes where he's flying around. I kind of agree with a lot of people. I think that this was edited for the trailer. I don't think that this scene between Leia and Kylo Ren is actually going to be that way in the movie. The only thing, if it is, then either they've really, really switched things around if they kill her off that way, because one of the things that you can notice when he's flying through those ships, in his new TIE Striker, I think it's called. It's a new TIE fighter, but he's still got that kind of like bandage looking thing over his scar with the little hatch marks. So that's got to be fairly early in the movie, because the scene that we see later on in the trailer, and assuming it's later on in the movie, he's just got a plain scar down there. So that has to come off, which means that obviously this is earlier in the film. So number one, either they've decided to bump off Princess Leia fairly early if that scene goes to pass, or if he just pulls the trigger and it just hits a shield or something. I still think it's fairly early in the movie, but I think that this is just trailer mischief, and I don't think that that's necessarily going to be the way that it's all truly edited together in the movie itself. But still, it's a really interesting idea to explore whether or not he pulls that trigger and who he's actually aiming at, because he's got his sights set on the bridge. Porgs right there. I'm sorry, I love Porgs. They've only been in a couple trailers here, but I loved Ewoks too, so I just came around Star Wars at the right age for that to really be the kind of thing that kind of drew me in. Awesome shot there of Captain Phasma deflecting Finn's attack there. I think that that's going to be a really awesome scene. I think that they're going to do a lot more with Phasma in this film, and I really hope so, because that's just an awesome look to a character. And they're obviously building her up through the novels. I haven't had a chance to read that novel quite yet, but it should really be an interesting dynamic between those two here. Then you get Snoke holding Rey there. And again, people are kind of wondering, is that a vision? Is that for real? Is that more trailer mischief going on? Is Snoke really holding her there in the air? Was that somebody else in some different robes? Regardless, I think I don't necessarily think those scenes come immediately one after another, but I think that is kind of the same overall scene. I think you're going to get something very similar to Return of the Jedi, where for whatever reason, I think that Rey is going to go with Kylo Ren to meet Snoke, try to end things, thinking that she's got things figured out, and she's going to find that she doesn't know that what's going on. And I kind of think that might be what Luke was talking about just a couple scenes ago in the trailer, where he said, this is not going to go the way that you think. That seems very ominous. It seems much more like she's going to the dark side. I don't see her going to the dark side, but I do think that she's going to kind of get a hair up her butt, so to speak, and might be interested in going after Snoke, just trying to end things right away. I'm powerful enough. I've already defeated Kylo Ren. I can take the next step because now I've got a little bit of training. And very similar to how Luke ran off in Empire Strikes Back, but Kylo Ren is going to do what Vader did in Return of the Jedi in taking her to Snoke, and I think that that's ultimately going to be how things plan out, if that does come to pass in that little scene there. Now we're at about the 2-minute mark of the trailer. You got some more voiceover going on. And again, here we come to the pivotal scene where everybody is kind of taking it at face value. And for whatever reason, I am not at all. To me, that scene at the end of the trailer is nothing but trailer mischief, just trying to misguide us a little bit. Because if you look at the lighting, and I understand that they could be on just different sides of the equation there, but to me the big telling point to where that is not in the same area is you look at the lighting on her. She's got kind of a sunset lighting on her, and it's a flat light. The light is coming from over here. It's still lit from the same side. They did a fantastic job of putting this scene together in the trailer to make us think that it's from the same area. But number one, John Campea, you're wrong. I know you're never going to watch this video, but Rey isn't reaching out. She's sitting there on some sort of rock world and just talking to somebody. She never reaches out. It's Kylo Ren that reaches his hand out. So to me, that's still from two different scenes. But again, the lighting is what tells it, because the lighting is flashing like it's coming from firelight, or from the, if it's on Mustafar, from the lava. It's kind of flashing on his face. It's inconsistent. It's a flat light. It's steady. It's lit the same way throughout when we're talking about Rey. So to me, that is not from the same thing. To me, I think that is Rey's scene where she convinces Luke to train her, because I think she's telling Luke, I need somebody to show me my place in all of this, and only you can do it. Otherwise, I'm going to be going around the rest of my life being lost. And I think that is the pivotal scene where she convinces Luke to train her, and he gets over his fear of whether it be her powers or whether it be his previous failings. And I think that is where that scene comes from. And who Kylo Ren is reaching out to, I really don't have a clue. I think that's going to be a fun scene to see in the movie. Who is he looking at with reasonably soft eyes? We're seeing more of a Ben Solo as opposed to Kylo Ren when he's reaching out saying, take my hand. It could still be Rey, but I don't think that it's from that exact same scene, and I don't think the voiceover matches what's going on in that scene either. One last thing that wasn't in the trailer, but I still have to point out, I really don't understand why everybody wants Rey to go dark. Not necessarily because it wouldn't serve the character. It would be an extremely interesting way to change up Rey and really kind of put a different spin on what's going on here to make our protagonist go dark in the middle of a series. But what it does to Luke, nobody ever thinks about that. If you have Kylo Ren go to the dark side, and then Rey go to the dark side, and all his disciples being killed off, all of a sudden the galaxy's biggest hero is now its greatest failure of all time. There is no coming back from that. I don't care if he kills off Snoke. I don't care if he redeems both of them. Essentially, he is the galaxy's biggest failure. And why we want that for Luke Skywalker is beyond me, to be honest. But it'll be really interesting to see what they do with this. I don't necessarily buy into the whole Reylo thing. I don't think that they're going to make them a romantic couple. As John Campea pointed out on his show, you'd have to really kind of make it turn around pretty quickly. And a lot of times audiences aren't willing to buy in when romances are formed that quickly. The only reason that I wouldn't be completely against it is because I think the chemistry between those two would be extremely interesting. I think it would be very much a film version of what we could have had with Luke and Mara Jade, where Mara Jade just hated him with a passion and then kind of eventually came around and started to love him. Now, I don't think that you should even explore that remotely, other than maybe that hand reaching out, take my hand, I'll take you on kind of deal until episode 9. But it would be an interesting dynamic if that's something that they wanted to explore in the future. I just hope that it's not heavily implied in this film. Ultimately, what do you think? What do you think? Are you one of those people that buys into the whole ending scene of that trailer being verbatim? Basically, they're in the same space, sharing a moment there together. I don't personally think it, but maybe you do. Explain why in the comments section. Love to hear your thoughts on it. Visually, this was a fantastic trailer. It didn't give you too much of the story, but it gave you enough to really kind of know what's going on in this film in the grand scope of things, because it's very much an Empire Strikes Back type film in terms of what's going on with the Resistance. Crap's hitting the fan. Things aren't necessarily going the way that they want. And I'm just super excited for this movie. I've got my tickets come December 14th, going to the double feature. Going to see Force Awakens and Last Jedi at the same time, so it's going to be a really fun time. That'll do it for today's show. Hopefully you enjoyed it, this little Star Wars trailer review. Until the next time, though, I'll see you then.